Can you feel it too? That tingling sensation beneath the surface of reality. The world is jerking like an old movie, full of glitches, déjà vu, and absurd coincidences. The NPC meme isn't a joke anymore, is it? Millions of people sense that something fundamental is shifting, especially now, with 2025 on the horizon. Forget the old explanations about leaving the Matrix. The truth is more radical. The simulation isn't out there, it's in you. And this cosmic chaos? It's your chance to finally write the code of your own reality. Stay tuned if you're ready to go from user to reality hacker. This will change everything. The idea that our perceived reality is not the ultimate truth is as old as human thought itself. Plato already spoke in his allegory of the cave that we only see shadows on the wall, not the true forms. The ancient Gnostics, those radical mystics of the first centuries, went even further. They warned of the demiurge, an imperfect creator god, sometimes described as ignorant or even malicious, who created this material world as a kind of prison or illusion to cut off the divine sparks, the human souls, from their true origin, the true transcendent God. Their writings, such as the texts discovered in Nag Hammadi, are full of complex cosmologies that describe our world as a flawed copy, a kind of inferior simulation of a higher spiritual reality. They saw it as our task to see through the illusion and return to our true origin through gnosis, through direct intuitive knowledge. Eastern philosophies, such as parts of Hinduism, with the concept of Maya, or Buddhism, with the teaching of emptiness, shunyata, have also emphasized for millennia the illusory nature of our everyday perception and the need to lift this veil in order to attain liberation or enlightenment. Maya does not necessarily mean that the world does not exist, but rather that we do not recognize its true nature, misinterpreting it, trapped in our own mental projections and desires. And then, much later, in the late 19th century, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, a key figure in modern esotericism, came along and spoke in her complex teachings, which combined Eastern and Western mysteries, of different levels of reality and even of the possibility of soulless human shells, beings that function biologically but lack the higher spiritual connection, the immortal part. She described cycles of evolution and involution in which souls pass through certain stages of development, and suggested that not all human forms on Earth are equally ensouled or at the same stage of spiritual development. These ancient and more recent currents form the breeding ground for today's popular simulation theory. It is fueled, of course, by our own technological development. Advances in computer technology, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence suddenly make the idea of a simulated reality plausible, almost scientifically debatable. Philosophers such as Nick Bostrom have formalized the simulation argument. If it is possible to create simulations capable of consciousness, and if civilizations tend to create such simulations, e.g. to explore their past, then the statistical probability is high that we ourselves live in such a simulation. At the same time, quantum physics provides observations that challenge our classical notion of a fixed, objective reality. Phenomena such as entanglement, the observer effect, the fact that the act of measurement influences the result, or the idea that particles only take on a defined property through observation, seem to suggest that reality at its most fundamental level could be information-based, perhaps even digital or simulated. And then there are the personal, subjective experiences that more and more people are having. The glitches in the matrix. These are not just small, funny coincidences. They are moments of deep synchronicity in which events coincide in a way that is statistically extremely unlikely and seems to have a deeper meaning. They are déjà vu experiences that sometimes feel so intense that it seems as if you have actually lived through a scene before. It's the feeling of sometimes meeting people who seem to be on autopilot, who respond to complex questions with standard phrases, whose eyes appear empty. The phenomenon that went viral on the internet as NPC, non-player character, and triggers a deep unease in many people. It's the feeling that time sometimes seems to run faster or slower, that causality is sometimes broken, that the laws of physics seem to be suspended in rare moments. All of this together, the ancient myths, the philosophical arguments, the scientific evidence, and personal experiences, feeds the suspicion that something is wrong with our familiar reality. It is as if the operating system on which our perception runs is reaching its limits, as if the old programs that have previously given us the illusion of a stable world are beginning to stutter and produce errors. This seems to be intensifying now, at a time that many perceive as a transition phase, in which old global structures are disintegrating and great cosmic cycles, as described in various astrological or spiritual traditions, are coming to an end and new ones are beginning. The reaction of many spiritual seekers and teachers to this growing suspicion is often, "Wake up, recognize the illusion, get out of the matrix." They are looking for a red button, a gateway, a path to transcendence, to escape this flawed, perhaps even hostile simulation and reach a true reality. But this is where our first revolutionary thought comes in, the one that changes everything. What if this search for an external exit, for an escape, is precisely part of the illusion? What if there is no exit in the conventional sense, because the simulation is not primarily an external structure that holds us captive? What if the fundamental hardware of this reality is not made of silicon and circuits, but of something much more subtle and powerful, pure consciousness itself? And what if the software that runs on this consciousness hardware and shapes our experienced reality is nothing more than our own deepest inner self, our collective unconscious, which is currently undergoing a massive update triggered by cosmic energies? If this is true, then it is not a matter of fleeing, but of understanding the mechanisms of this inner simulation and learning how we can consciously shape it. To understand this radical idea that the simulation is not outside but inside, we must detach ourselves from the popular notion of a computer-generated matrix and turn to one of the most profound explorers of the human psyche, Carl Gustav Jung. Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist and student of Freud, who later went his own way, developed a model of the psyche that goes far beyond personal consciousness and the personal unconscious, with its repressed memories and complexes. He postulated the existence of the collective unconscious. Don't imagine this as a dark basement full of monsters, but rather as a vast, invisible, yet incredibly powerful ocean of psychic energy that connects all of humanity. It is like the psychic genetic makeup of our species, a shared database that contains the basic patterns of human experience, emotion, and imagination. Jung called these universal, innate patterns archetypes. Archetypes are not the images or stories themselves, but the invisible structures or potentials behind them, which then manifest themselves in concrete images, symbols, myths, fairy tales, religious ideas, and also in our dreams and fantasies. Think of the archetype of the hero, the universal story of departure, trials, the fight with the dragon, the shadow, and the return with a treasure, new consciousness. Think of the archetype of the Great Mother, the principle of nurturing, giving birth, but also devouring and destroying. Think of the wise old man or the wise old woman, the principle of wisdom, guidance, intuition. Think of the shadow, all that is dark, rejected, unconscious in us and in the collective. Think of the anima, the unconscious feminine principle in men, and the animus, the unconscious masculine principle in women, which shape our relationships and our understanding of the opposite sex. The trickster, the rebel, the lover, the divine child. The list is long, and the patterns are infinitely varied. These archetypes are, to stay with our metaphor, the basic building blocks, the core programs, or the fundamental algorithms that run in the operating system of the collective unconscious. They structure not only our inner worlds, but also our outer reality. Our cultures, our social systems, our political ideologies, our art, our relationships, all of these are permeated and shaped by these archetypal patterns. We literally live in the stories and dramas that these archetypes unfold, mostly without being aware of it. We unconsciously identify with certain archetypal roles. We act out their conflicts. We project their qualities onto others. When we understand this, the idea of simulation suddenly becomes much more tangible. Simulation is not an external prison built by some alien forces, be they aliens, machines, or a demiurge. Rather, it is a dynamic, constantly changing field of consciousness that is generated and maintained from the depths of our own collective psyche. The software that shapes our experienced reality is the myths, beliefs, fears, hopes, and above all, the archetypal patterns that are active in the collective unconscious. This implies something revolutionary. We are not merely passive victims or prisoners of this simulation. We are its co-creators, its co-authors. Every single human being contributes to the nature of this collective field with their consciousness, thoughts, feelings, and actions. We are simultaneously the users who experience the simulation and the programmers who, mostly unconsciously, help write its code. So the feeling of being stuck in a matrix is perhaps the feeling of being trapped in the patterns of our own collective unconscious, in the stories we tell ourselves without realizing it. And what does this Jungian perspective mean for the phenomenon of NPCs, or soulless people, that so many find disturbing? If the simulation is a product of our collective unconscious, then NPCs cannot be fundamentally different beings, external programs, or empty shells in a metaphysical sense. Here comes the second revolutionary idea, which may be painful because it forces us to turn the mirror on ourselves. The NPCs, the people who seem so empty, mechanical, repetitive, and programmed to us, are in reality manifestations of the parts of our own collective consciousness that are not yet integrated, that are still running on autopilot. They are the visible symptoms of humanity's undigested, unconscious content. They represent the collective shadow aspects, all the repressed fear, the unrecognized greed, the deep-seated ignorance, the transgenerational traumas that continue to run as rigid, repetitive patterns of behavior and thinking within the system. When we encounter a person who seems to act only out of fear and mistrust, they may be reflecting the collective shadow of fear. When we see someone ruthlessly striving for power and possessions, they may embody the collective shadow of greed. Furthermore, these NPC-like behaviors also represent the power of outdated or rigid archetypal scripts. Archetypes are neutral in themselves. They are pure energy potentials. But when we unconsciously and completely identify with a particular archetype without individualizing it, without connecting it to our conscious self and our heart, that archetype can become a rigid script that controls us. Think of the warrior archetype. In its positive form, it represents courage, discipline, and protection. But when lived unconsciously and unintegrated, he can become a blind aggressor, a tyrant who knows only destruction. Think of the archetype of the victim. He can help us develop compassion and seek help. But when we chronically identify with the role of victim, we become incapable of action, attract suffering again and again, and give away our power. So when we blindly and unthinkingly follow such an archetypal script, be it the eternal rebel who is against everything, the martyr who always sacrifices himself, the critic who talks down about everything, the unconscious lover who gets entangled in dependencies, then we ourselves act like an NPC. We follow a program that does not originate from our true self, but from the depths of the collective unconscious. The frightening truth is that each of us carries these potential NPC traits within us. Each of us has a shadow. Each of us is influenced by archetypes. The other, who seems so empty, so programmed, so frustrating, and who may trigger us, is often just a mirror for an unconscious code, unlived potential, or a repressed shadow within ourselves. They are part of the system, a symptom of collective unconsciousness that cries out for integration, for awareness, for an update. The distinction between awakened and NPC is therefore not an absolute dividing line between different types of people, but rather a spectrum of consciousness and integration that exists within each of us. And it is precisely this urgently needed update to the operating system of the collective unconscious that seems to be taking place now, with particular intensity from 2025 onwards. The large, slow cycles of the outer planets in astrology are often seen as mirrors or triggers for profound collective changes in consciousness. The current and upcoming shifts are particularly dramatic and point to a fundamental change. Let's not view them as deterministic predictions, but as symbolic descriptions of the energies and challenges facing our collective unconscious, like cosmic patch notes for the reality update. First, there is Neptune, the planet of dreams, spirituality, illusions, but also dissolution and compassion. After 14 years in its own watery sign of Pisces, a time of heightened sensitivity, but also of confusion, an escape into virtual worlds or addictions, it is now entering, finally, at the end of March 2025, the fiery, impulsive sign of Aries. It's like a tsunami hitting a volcano. Neptune in Aries challenges us to no longer just dream our spiritual visions, but to bring them into the world actively, courageously, and perhaps even combatively. It is the energy of the spiritual pioneer, the visionary warrior. At the same time, it harbors the danger of fanaticism, of new, aggressive ideologies, of the illusion of finding salvation through struggle. It is a call to ground our dreams and stand up for them, but without losing ourselves in new illusions. Then there is Uranus, the planet of revolution, sudden change, technology, individuality, and liberation. It is moving, finally from July 2025, into the airy, communicative sign of Gemini. Uranus in Gemini brings a revolution in thinking, communication, information, and networks. It is the energy of the ingenious inventor, the radical thinker, the network hacker. We can expect an explosion of new ideas, technologies, especially in the fields of communication and AI, and social movements. At the same time, there is a danger of information overload, mental fragmentation, superficial communication, and the spread of radical but perhaps unfounded ideas. It is a call to free our perceptions, break old patterns of thinking, and find new ways of connecting and exchanging ideas while remaining critical and centered. And finally, the lunar node axis, which symbolizes our collective learning task and destiny. It shifts, in January 2025, from the Aries-Libra axis, focus on me versus you, conflict versus harmony, to the Pisces-Virgo axis. The ascending moon's node, Rahu, the goal, in Pisces, calls us to connect more strongly with our intuition, our spirituality, our compassion, and our sense of universal connectedness. It is about developing trust in life, dissolving the boundaries of the ego, and surrendering to the mystery. The descending lunar node, Ketu, the foundation, what needs to be let go, in Virgo calls on us to let go of old patterns of excessive perfectionism, criticism, purely rational analysis, and the separation of body and mind. The challenge of this axis is to not live spirituality, Pisces, as an otherworldly escape, but to anchor it practically in everyday life through service to the whole, through healing, including of the body and the earth, and through the development of discernment, Virgo. It is the ultimate task to connect heaven and earth. These massive astrological shifts are like a huge reboot, perhaps even a kernel panic moment, a system crash and restart in the operating system of the collective unconscious. The old code, the old belief systems, the old social structures based on fear, separation, and control are becoming increasingly unstable. They are collapsing. We see the symptoms everywhere in the world: political polarization, economic uncertainty, ecological crises, social unrest. It is a chaotic, frightening time. But that is precisely why, at this very moment of system update, the greatest opportunity in millennia lies before us. When the old programs crash, when the hard drive is reformatted, it becomes possible to delete old, limiting code, the viruses of fear, greed, and hatred, and write completely new code. The code of love, compassion, connection, creativity, freedom. Neptune in Aries is the chance to feed your boldest, most positive visions directly into the collective field with fiery determination. Uranus in Gemini is a call to free your perception, heal your communication, revolutionize your thinking, and forge new, light-filled networks. The lunar nodes in Pisces Virgo are the task of manifesting your deepest spiritual truth, Pisces, in a practical and healing way in the world, Virgo. This is not just abstract astrology. These are the concrete tasks and tools that the current quality of time provides us with, the patch notes for the reality update that we can write together. So how do you actively approach this change? How do you go from being a passive user who suffers from glitches and system crashes to a conscious reality hacker who uses the cosmic update window to help create a better reality? The answer does not lie in fighting an external matrix, but in consciously shaping your own participation in the collective field of consciousness. It is an inner journey with outer effects. Here are 4 basic steps, 4 keys to hacking your reality. First, debug your own code. This is perhaps the most important and most difficult step. It requires radical, unsparing self-awareness and shadow work. Become aware of your own unconscious programs. Recognize your own NPC patterns. Where do you act on autopilot? Where do you repeat destructive behaviors? Where are you trapped in old beliefs that no longer serve you? Recognize your fears, your projections, what you criticize in others, you often carry within yourself unconsciously, your trigger points, and then integrate these parts of yourself. This does not mean acting them out, but accepting them, understanding where they come from, often from old wounds or inherited patterns, and consciously transforming their energy. Techniques such as journaling, therapy, certain forms of meditation, such as Vipassana, dream work, or even body-oriented approaches can help here. As long as you send your own unconscious programs unfiltered into the collective field, you are part of the problem, not the solution. Only by integrating your shadow will you become a clear channel for light-filled code. Second, acquire root privileges. Imagine you want to change the operating system. To do that, you need administrator rights, root access. In our consciousness simulation, this means consciously connecting with your true core, your higher self, the source of your intuition, the infinite consciousness that you truly are. This core lies beyond the conditioned personality, beyond the ego and its programs. How do you gain access to it? Through regular practice of silence and introspection, meditation in its many forms, mindfulness exercises in everyday life, time in nature, conscious breathing, keeping a dream journal, and learning to trust your intuition, that quiet inner voice. These are the ways to connect with the administrator within you, to gain direct access to the operating system of your consciousness, beyond the superficial, often flawed programs of the everyday mind. From this connection, you draw wisdom, clarity, and the power to change. Third, write new scripts. Once you have identified your old limiting programs, debugging, and found access to your source, root privileges, you can begin to consciously write new, empowering scripts for your life and thus also for the collective. Stop unconsciously living old, destructive archetypes such as the victim, the martyr, the critic, or the tyrant. Instead, consciously choose archetypes that empower you and the world. The conscious creator who shapes their reality, the healer who supports themselves and others, the visionary who sees new possibilities, the sovereign magician who directs energies, the loving warrior who stands up for truth and compassion. How do you write these scripts? By clearly aligning your intention, by using your imagination to vividly and in detail picture the reality you desire, visualization, by feeling the appropriate emotions as if you were already there. Because emotions are the energy that drives manifestation. Use affirmations, vision boards, rituals. These are all tools for feeding new programs into your subconscious and thus into the collective field. Consciously choose which stories you want to live and tell. Fourth, use the cosmic APIs. The current astrological constellations, such as Neptune in Aries, Uranus in Gemini, or the Pisces-Virgo moon node axis, are not just passive influences. Think of them as special programming interfaces, APIs, or even cheat codes that the universe is currently providing you with to make certain changes easier or more powerful. Do you want to bring radically new, spiritually grounded visions into the world and courageously stand up for them? Then consciously use the energy of Neptune in Aries. Meditate on its qualities and align your actions accordingly. Do you want to revolutionize your communication, break old thought patterns, and connect in new ways? Then consciously tap into the energy of Uranus in Gemini. Experiment with new forms of expression, learn, question. Do you want to strengthen your intuition and apply it practically in your everyday life to heal and serve? Then consciously work with the Pisces-Virgo moon node axis. Learn the language of astrology or other divinatory systems, not as a prediction of fate, but as a map of current energies and potentials. Learn to consciously cooperate with these cosmic energies, to act in harmony with them, instead of letting them push you around unconsciously and chaotically. They are tools that can help you feed your new code into the system more effectively. The Great Revolution, the much heralded awakening that is now taking place, is therefore not an external show, not a Hollywood movie in which we wait for a savior or fight against evil machines. It is deeply internal, personal, and at the same time collective. You don't change the simulation we call reality by fighting its external symptoms, but by radically transforming your own inner code, your own contribution to the collective field of consciousness. Your inner work, healing your wounds, integrating your shadow, connecting with your true self, consciously choosing your thoughts and feelings, rewrites the software of reality from the inside out. Every conscious thought, every feeling that comes from the heart, every courageous, authentic choice is a new, potentially more luminous command that is fed into the larger system and creates ripples. Are you ready to accept this responsibility? Are you ready to stop being a passive, often frustrated user in a seemingly flawed and sometimes hostile simulation? Are you ready to become the conscious architect, the sovereign programmer of your experience and co-creator of a new earth instead? The time is not sometime, the time is now. The cosmic gates for the greatest consciousness update of all time are opening right now. The old programs are running hot and crashing. Chaos is the birth of the new. Start writing your code. Share your glitches, your aha moments, your insights from shadow work, your first successes in conscious manifestation in the comments. Let's form a community of reality hackers, learn from each other, and support each other. And if you want to know right now how you can specifically use the explosive power of Neptune in Aries to manifest your wildest visions, 5 immediately applicable hacking techniques that can change your life, Then subscribe to this channel and activate the bell, because that's exactly what I'll reveal in the next video. Stop fearing the matrix or waiting for a way out. Start writing it. Your reality is waiting for your commands. Become a reality hacker. Now,